Welcome to another episode of InRange. This is the April 2021 Patreon-supported Q&A. Lots of questions. Going to get straight to it. If you want to submit questions yourself, you could be a Patreon supporter at the $5 level and above. And I can't get to every question every month because there's just too many of them, but I get to as many as I can. And if you asked it more than once, let me know in the questions. So let's just get going. Philip W. Do you see a large difference in content requests between Patreon and YouTube? Yeah, I do. The big difference is YouTube generally, and these are generalizations. Don't make nothing is 100%. Generally speaking, the YouTube requests are mud tests. Show me mud tests, show me dirt tests, show me stuff breaking, or show me something from a video game. That's neither a positive nor a negative. These are just statements of fact from what I've perceived. Patreon requests tend to be more historical, more historically oriented. For example, Old West vignettes tend to be in the Patreon requests, and deeper dive, in-depth technical things seem to come from Patreon. So to be very cursory, I would say that the YouTube requests are more, I would say they're more cursory, and the Patreon requests are more in-depth. RGB, red, green, blue. Third time asking, but not a big deal. Sorry about that. With the advancement of electronic sights, what features would you like to see in a next generation optic? There's a lot of things there. One of which we could think about are like digital scopes, which I haven't talked about on InRange at all yet, but I'm going to be. I have one of those ATN digital scopes that I'm going to play with here, and you'll see that here eventually. Takes me time to get through this stuff and get it done the way I want to get it done right. So please be patient. I'd like to see it be able to have, obviously be able to work in bright light, but I would say like powered from the rail, but I've talked about that so many darn times, and I don't think that that's necessarily specifically about the electronic sight itself. Range readings, like, gosh, it's tough. Reticle changes, night vision compatible. I don't really have a great answer for this. I mean, there's a couple things out there that I'm going to be looking at on the channel that sort of fall in line with this RGB. I have the Mi Pro Light, their Foresight, I think it's called, that I'm going to be playing with. I can't remember the exact name. That's the one that allows you to modify the reticle and actually change it, and actually change 0 per gun by moving it from gun to gun with your phone. That'll be something I'll be talking about. That's something I'd like to see. Maybe the ability to feed it to some sort of augmented reality headset. That's something I definitely would want to see. I've played with that as well with what we have now, and it's extremely crude. I've tried to do it with that ATN sight. So I think I'm coming down to an answer here. I'd like to see something that has the ability to be easily zeroed if you move it from one gun to another. Low consumption on power, powered by a rail if possible. Digital is fine as long as the resolution's high enough, and that would allow for the ability to be a variable magnification done right, and the ability to feed it to a AR type helmet or visor would be amazing. I think we're getting there. I think we're going to see it. We're not there yet. Andrew H. How do you feel about modern tactical, in quotes, operator quotes, gun culture? I don't really feel either way. I think that, well, I guess I do and I don't. I don't know that the culture is interesting. I think that there's a lot of value, and I think we should be becoming skilled with our arms. If we're going to own firearms, becoming very capable with it and being a skilled, trained user of that weapon is really something that one should pursue if one's going to take on the responsibility of owning it. And in that regard, the tactical operator gun culture, some of that at least, is exactly that's what they're pursuing. If you're talking more about just a fetishization of military gear and gun bro sort of thing, yeah, I mean, it's what you're into. It's what you're into. I don't know that I can say anything about that. As long as you're safe and you're pursuing responsible gun ownership, I don't really have anything to say about your particular flavor of it. I think that's the best answer I can give. Mason B. What's your favorite double single action pistol and why? So you're asking for specifically one that's DASA. The Beretta the Beretta, the M9, and all the derivatives around the M9, so the 92, that has a pretty excellent double action press, and it has a great single action press. And as long as you go to the G model decocker versus a safety on the slide, I think that's a superb DA-SA pistol. I understand why the military chose it, and I think it's still fantastic to this day. And there are modernizations and more advanced and evolved versions of it that are hitting the market now, which are quite incredible. In fact, at the last two-gun match, one of our shooters brought out one of the really high-end ones, and man, that was a phenomenal pistol. So if I'm going to go with my favorite DASA pistol, I'm going to go with the Beretta 92 and its evolution derivatives thereof. Tim K. Given the amazing success that was Remote Brutality, do you have any plans to run any more remote matches for those of us unable to make it to the meat space matches? Well, Tim, if you haven't seen it already, I'm doing it already. I have a collaborative video with 9-hole reviews, Henry over there and Josh, and we're doing the Wasteland Shuffle based on the Fallout video game series. So that's a call out to use either an AKM or a bolt-action rifle with iron sights or a 4X scope or less and a 22 pistol. We're going to try and derive data from that. It's also kind of a play on the very traditional prepper themes, right? One guy will argue you need a bolt-action rifle and a 22 to survive in the wastes, and another person says no, you need an AK, which is the definitive survival rifle. And so by that stage is sort of designed around that conversation as well. But you'll see that when Henry and I have a conversation on his Pick 1 video, which will come after all of that. And by the way, if you're going to shoot the Wasteland Shuffle, yes, we specified an AK or a 4X scoped surplus rifle or less and a 22 pistol. But that should not stop you from doing something else. You might not be included in the scores, whatever that means. But if you want to go out there with a lever gun and big iron on your hip, go for it. Show us what you got. And let's see what everybody comes up with and what you do. And I think we're going to have some really interesting, clever videos submitted to this endeavor. So yes, that's going to be a thing. I plan to try and do it not constantly because we don't want to fatigue the audience and make it impossible to keep up with the remote challenges. But when it's viable, yeah, my plan is to push out more remote brutality type stuff. Justin, what considerations and methodology do you employ when Indigenous history is involved in your projects? Those are very difficult topics, and in fact, you're going to see some of that coming in range in the next month or so. I have a video that I've done. It's actually over 40 minutes in length about the war for Apacheria, and frankly, a lot of research is required for one. Two, as many primary sources as one can get, and that's challenging because most of the sources that are provided by white or American historians, and that doesn't necessarily provide a proper narrative to both sides of the conflict. Lastly, I never want to represent someone or a culture that I'm not a member of. So obviously I am not a member of any of the cultures of the Indigenous Southwest. I am a member of the current Southwest, but that's a different topic entirely. But I think we can talk about, as long as we're careful and respectful, the history and culture and things that occurred that evolve and revolve around things that have happened with Indigenous history, as long as we're very cognizant of the fact that of our sources being as fair as they can be, and really recognizing that I am not a member of that culture and cannot speak for it. So to speak about things that have occurred and why things have occurred is different than speaking for the people involved directly, and that's my intention and my goal. Alan B., with the 35-year anniversary of the FBI 1986 shootout, what do you think of the current discussion on handgun rounds? Times have changed, and 9 is different than what was previous. Do hot handgun cartridges have any place these days for two-legged defense? I was a 45 guy, now I'm a 9mm guy. Well, most of you probably realize this. What came out of the 1986 FBI shootout was the 10mm cartridge, which is, of course, a very hot cartridge, which then got turned into 10mm short, otherwise known as 40 Smith & Wesson, which sort of became the de facto law enforcement round, FBI round, for a long time, because 10mm was too much recoil for most agents and officers to handle properly without significant training, which then brought it down to something a little more than 9 and less than 45, however you want to measure that. That's, I don't know, put that your way. But of course, projectile design and things have changed, and 9mm now is a very, very effective self-defense cartridge, and 45 was as well. Is there room for a 10mm cartridge for two-legged defense, you mean against people. Well, obviously a 10 millimeter is going to do more than a 9 millimeter in terms of that, but you really don't need a 10 millimeter for self-defense. 10 millimeter is now, I think, more appropriate for a field handgun, something that might be used against something bigger than two-legged defense, like a bear. And so if you are specifically focusing on self-defense against other humans, I would not recommend 10 millimeter. I don't see the purpose of it. It's inducing more recoil, less capacity for really providing something you don't need more of, because proper 9 millimeter does the job. Blue Jay, what happened to the break top revolver? Strap designs like this Smith & Wesson 357 you see here just became more strong and rigid and capable of handling more powerful cartridges. It's really that simple. The break top revolver really is a great design and pretty much as fast to reload as a swing open cylinder, if you know what you're doing. But they just weren't capable of dealing with the larger, more powerful handgun rounds. Additionally, they are much more expensive and difficult to manufacture. So you can make this much simpler than you can make a effective, reliable top break that runs well. So I think the inclusion of cost for manufacture, difficulty of manufacture, in tandem with that of not being able to address larger and more powerful rounds, made the top break revolver a thing of the past. Babel Infocalypse, like apocalypse, but info. You've been tasked with fixing the Zip 22. The same external form factor must be kept, but anything about the mechanism is free game. If possible, what would you change? Honestly, nothing. I'd throw it in the trash. There is nothing to do with the Zip 22 that has value to anyone. It is a dumb idea. The form factor is a dumb idea. The idea of mounting it to a rifle is a dumb idea. There's absolutely no effort in trying to fix it. I really don't think so. It was bad from the go. It turned out to be bad in execution and continues to be a silly thing now. Carl V. The M16 rear sight handle had a provision to mount an optic to it, which was done before the advent of a flat-top upper receiver. Do you think it would have been feasible to change the profile of a forward part of the rifle handle to make it so that a rail could allow an optic to co-witness with the sights and therefore not change the iron sighting system on the M16/AR-15? It's not just possible, it was done. It's called a gooseneck mount. You screw it into the carry handle and it goes down and then takes a step and extends over the handguard, providing pick rail. And if you put a red dot sight there, you have a superb co-witness with the existing iron sights. So it's not just possible, it's completely been done, and those goosenecks are quite effective. In fact, if you put a gooseneck on an original old school carry handle AR, you are really, the weight distribution is a little strange, but functionally speaking, with a red dot, you are no worse off than having a red dot on a standard modern pick rail M4. Goosenecks work great. Josh R. Fifth or sixth time asking. Thoughts on a 6.5 Grendel or a what would Stoner do DMR due to the ability or due to be using a KP15 lower? The reason this is the fifth or sixth time asking is I think I've answered this question. To be honest, Josh, I'm not trying to be snarky, like 1,000 times. There is no interest whatsoever in doing a what would Stoner do DMR in a cartridge larger than the current Stanig Magwell 5.56 type thing we're doing now. Parts interchangeability weirdness in that environment is even worse than it is with 5.56, which by the way is even still a problem in the 5.56 world. Magazine capacity, or excuse me, magazine compatibility, all those things apply. And the reality is I don't see a value in lowering the weight of DMR rifles beyond what some of them are already weighing. Weight does have something to do with recoil or perceived recoil impulse. And when you start getting into larger cartridges, reducing the weight on the back end to increase the weight on the front end with larger bolts and heavier barrels and all that makes for an imbalanced, maybe significantly more recoiling gun. It just doesn't make sense. Stuka 444. With YouTube doing weird shenanigans to some of your videos and the understanding that you have other distribution points for your videos, what is the plan going forward with posting videos on YouTube? The plan is I will post videos on YouTube as long as they are compliant with YouTube's policies for as long as I can or until they stop me from doing it. Because the reality is, while I've been providing alternative distribution points for InRange now for over 4 years, BitChute, Facebook, was on full 30 before I was even on YouTube, which exploded eventually. The viewers are completely on YouTube. The percentage of viewership to a video off YouTube is nothing, not even fragments of a percent compared to what the views are on YouTube, even with shadow banning, even with deprioritization, even with demonetization. YouTube's installed user base is the only place you can be on the internet if you want people to actually see your videos. They are part of the social media oligarchy, and while we, the consumer, are allowing them to be that, the reality is we, the consumer, go there to watch our content. And while I will provide some videos alternatively on other networks that I can't put on YouTube, such as reloading videos or things like that, which are specifically and strictly prohibited by YouTube policies, yes, I know, other people do it. Other people get away with it. I'm not planning to be the guy that doesn't get away with it, because I've been a high-profile thorn in the side of YouTube for years now in terms of my critique of how they're running the network. So I would say that the focus on my content and the focus on my adherence to their policies could be, I don't know for a fact, may be more significant than some other channel. So they're doing it and getting away with it. Good for them. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm not going to. So I will put things that I can't put on YouTube elsewhere and let you know about it. I'm specifically now publishing every video that I put out, also via a Patreon post, to make sure that the true direct supporters of this channel that keep me financially alive and afloat see every video, so that they don't not see a video because it was blacklisted. So by putting it on Patreon, I can ensure that they see it. But no, it's going to be on YouTube until I can't be, because that's where the viewers are. There's no way around it. Oh man, I messed this username up before. I know Vercintorix. I'm going to get lots of corrections. Everything in the firearms industry seems to be derivations of already existing products, rehashes of the past, or utter garbage. That's true. Has there been anything in the past year that caught your eye as both unique and functional? Well, I've profiled some of them on the channel. The MDR had a rough start, but I think the MDR truly is unique and functional, and it really is a fantastic bullpup that has a lot of really clever, interesting design features. The Mantis, or the Black Label bipod that was on this channel just recently as an addition to the MDR, is unique and functional, and it's a unique and functional approach to a bipod solution that no one else is doing. So yeah, there's that. I forgot the number. Is it the AK-107? Polar Tactical just did a video about it. I don't think we have them here in the States. It is essentially the civilian derivative of the reciprocating mass, the reduced recoil impulse. That's unique and looks to be functional. I'd love to find out if I can get my hands on one. Unique and functional, what else? That's where I'm at right now. There's probably something else. So, no, it isn't all garbage. The vast majority of things are derivations of existing products, for sure. But there's some neat things here and there. And hopefully I mentioned a few right now. Kevin T. Your suggestions for a low round count set of pistol drills to improve or maintain skills while ammo is so expensive. You know, I actually have some really old videos on InRange from like 4 years ago, maybe even, which were just called pistol drill, and I did it like a drill with 3 different guns. Maybe I should do more of those, but they're still on there and you can search for them, and they're kind of that. But what I would say is the best thing you can do for low round count is dry fire, because that's 0 round count, and believe me, it really is effective. Additionally, setting up more than one target instead of doing doubles or triples on a target. Do single engagements to one target and then a single engagement to another target, which you see a lot at 2-gun, because I believe the ability to switch between targets and reapply your sight picture is a valuable skill. Adding physical elements to your drills, like as you see at 2-gun as well, like do some kettlebell swings and then do one shot. Then safely put the pistol on a table, do more kettlebell swings, do one shot. You're going to use very little ammunition, but you're going to increase your skill set dramatically. James M. What situations, if any, would you rather have 7.62x39 over 5.56? This is easy. Brush and barrier penetration. 5.56 is not great when it gets deflected by brush or barriers in the way. It's also not that great at barrier penetration in general. 7.62x39, having a better, more mass essentially, will definitely do better in terms of deflection through brush, less deflection through brush, and better barrier penetration than 5.56. Now, there are some Gucci 5.56 rounds that can do quite well, but 7.62x39 is definitely better for that. So if brush and barrier penetration is your concern, 7.62x39 is a better choice than 5.56. It's kind of a worse choice in every other way, in my opinion. Jonathan G. I just bought an AR-550 half steel plate target. I've read up on the correct angles and recommended distance, but is there any other advice for someone who's shooting steel for the first time? iPro. iPro, iPro, iPro. Always wear your iPro. You never know when there could be some really strange fragment or shrapnel that can come off a steel target. Now, distance and target presentation matter. Minimum distance for shooting with, let's say, 5.56 or 300 blackout should be 50 yards. And that's minimum. That you should go further. The further you put your target out, the longer the target will last, depending, of course, on the projectiles you're using. If you're shooting AP, you're going to wreck your target. But if you put a AR-550 out at 100, you're going to get less dimpling and less damage than if you put it at 50. Additionally, having a clean, good, non-pocketed, not pockmarked, face is also better, because as you shoot it, you eventually wear off some of that hardened surface, which is little pock marks, and eventually it'll start drilling a crater into the steel. Once your steel has significant craters or holes in it, you need to be more concerned about the safety. In fact, I won't use those at the 2-gun match unless they're way out at like 200 yards, because at that point the risk is zero, really. But a 50-yard steel target with a giant crater or hole in it can throw spall or even projectiles back at you. So I would say minimum 50 meters or 50 yards for 5.56 and 300 blackout. 6.5 Creedmoor I wouldn't even start beyond. I would start at 100. 9mm is safe at relatively safe based on your target angle, meaning the proper angle as you're describing with high quality steel surface. 15 yards minimum, 25 yards, but you're never going to dimple your steel target with handgun rounds. That starts happening with high velocity stuff like 5.56. So I would start, as long as the plate is properly designed at the right angle with a good surface, 9mm 15, push it out if you'd like, 5.56 and 300 blackout 50 or greater, 6.5 Creedmoor 100 or greater, and wear your iPro. Jordan W. How would you describe the distinction between platforms or audience which allows you to keep comments open on YouTube but requires disabling on pit shoot? Well, first of all, as we all know, the comment section on YouTube are a freaking nightmare. There's a lot of positive there, and thank you for the positive and good comments. And they don't have to be non-critical to be positive. A critical comment that is done in the right light is welcome and good. And we all are there. It should be there to learn. Negative comments, just calling people names or throwing out slanders and slur, waste of time, worthless. And YouTube loves to have that on it. And the audience, some of the audience, seems to like to do that no matter what the content is. And to you, maybe you should find something better to do with your time. BitChute, however, is almost 100% nonsense. The minute the video comes live, and I'm saying the minute it comes live, immediately there'll be stuff in there that's scams. There are stuff about the end of the world, the apocalypse, QAnon. It shows up almost instantaneously. Click here for a video about how the election was stolen and QAnon is harvesting adrenochrome from kids. That stuff is on BitChute instantly. Racist Nazi stuff is on BitChute instantly. The comments are filled with that stuff within minutes. It's not even worth trying to deal with it. It's better just to turn them off. I don't know what to say about that. Obviously, when marginalized content has to go to platforms with other marginalized content, this is kind of what happens, I guess. And I don't know that BitChute concerns themselves with it. They don't seem to. And a lot of it seems to be bots, too. The amount of bot activity, considering how those comments show up so instantaneously, I think it's a bot. But not all of it's a bot. Yeah, that's the reason. So I just turn it off, because there's no... While YouTube is a cesspool, it's a cesspool that has quality in it. The BitChute comments are literally nothing but a cesspool with an occasional real comment. So why bother? Austin T. Thoughts on Radtech's Smart Slide for the Glock 17? Assuming it could pass military durability trials, do you see such a system becoming the norm 50 years from now? So for those of you that aren't familiar with this, I wasn't either. It looks freaking cool. It removes the back. You replace the backplate with this electronic device, and it tells you when the chamber's empty. Boy, that's something we've got to make sure works well to make sure it's trustable. It also does a round count to tell you how many rounds you have left in your magazine based on firing, and it seems to work from the video. There's like pre-orders going on right now. I'd love to get my hands on one of those and put that through the test. But the idea of a reliable, good round counter, or something that you can look at with a glance that tells you and you can trust the status of your weapon, is amazing and would be a very valuable asset, in my opinion, whether it's on a pistol or a rifle. I mean, we've seen this in sci-fi since Aliens and earlier, right? So Do I think this could be the norm 50 years from now? Yeah, I think this could be the norm way sooner than that. 10 years from now, if they get it right. Maybe sooner. I want to try it out. Raditech, can you get me one? If not, I'll pre-order, but I really would like to play with that. And there's an example. Is that innovative? Well, I mean, the idea has been out there for a long time. Is it innovative in terms of implementing it in a way that works? Yeah. And there's an example of something that I think holds promise. Jeff K. Do you think the toxicity of gun culture, past and present, is a roadblock to gun rights conversation? Yes, I do. This comes with almost any topic in which someone has a specific focus on a specific right. I mean, you see people that are like, legalize marijuana, which, by the way, I think is a good idea. I'm not even a consumer of drugs. That's not my thing. But I do think it should be legalized because I think the individual should have the individual liberty to make a decision for themselves as long as they don't inflict it upon others. And I feel the same way about gun rights. You should have the right to have a gun and be able to self-defend yourself, or have the right to self-defense with your gun if you deem that it's right for you, as well as practice and use all the sports around it. But that doesn't mean we should force it on others. That said, the broader the base of people that support gun rights, regardless of their other political ideology, the more likely we are to not lose our gun rights. And therefore, when you see things like, for example, well, yeah, but I mean, those people are into supporting like legalized marijuana. Those, I can't support them. Even if they support our gun rights, those people are cretins. You just lost someone in terms of what you say is your cause. If you want a world where everyone believes exactly what you believe, you are going to have a problem, because that is not the real world. And I don't want a world where everyone believes exactly what I believe. I think a diversity of opinions with positivity and working together for a brighter future is much more valuable than toxicity and hating on one another. And in doing that, and the toxicity of hating on one another when it comes to gun rights, guess what that does? Reduces the amount of people that are going to support your cause that you say you're ostensibly in support of and believe in. You know that whole idea about certain things make strange bedfellows? Well, sometimes that happens. When it comes to politics, the best way to move forward for positive end results is to have those strange bedfellows. And so, while you might have very different opinions on the legalization of marijuana or the legalization of sex work or the decriminalization of either, those are just two examples, and you support gun rights, then working with the people that also believe in those things will also help you for your gun rights. And when you sit there and just throw around nonsense or vitriol or call people communists or the damn word degenerate that shows up all the time, which is a whole nother thing, yeah, you're not helping gun rights, you're hurting them. Craig S. Is hand loading for 7.5 FK viable currently? Nope. Currently, if you want to get 7.5 or FK75 ammo for the FK Burno PSD, you buy it from them. I don't believe there's any dies on the market. I don't think the proprietary projectiles are on the market. So no, at the moment, I do not believe you can reload for the FK75. London Jolly. What would you find more valuable? A diverse collection of various types of guns? Some decent, some cheap? Or a well-documented and concise collection following a single model of a gun with every variation of said gun? You know what? I can't answer this for you. I can only answer it for myself, right? So I guess you're asking me. It says, what would you? And you have me and you in caps. So I'll answer it for me. Your mileage may vary. I would much rather have a diverse collection of various types of guns, some decent, some cheap, some expensive, than to have one very intense collection of one specific thing with every model variant. I am much more interested in the manual of arms and using guns of different designs throughout history than I am when one gun has 3 screws in it in 1914 and had 2 screws in 1918. I really don't care. Unless the manual of arms changed from then to then, that makes it a different gun, right? But if the manual of arms is the same, then it's just the same gun with a 3rd screw, and I really couldn't care less. So for me, absolutely, a diverse collection of various types of guns is far more compelling than a focused collection of every said variation of the same gun. Matthias. I recall you mentioning that you enjoyed playing the game Red Baron as a child. Yeah, I did. Red Baron was World War I flight sim. Looks like crap by modern standards, but it was really, it captured my imagination. Do you have any interest in retro PCs, like collecting, restoring, and using old PCs? And you have a room full of old beige electronics like I do. No, I honestly don't. What I would like to do is see the type of entertainment applications and games and simulations that existed then be created for modern technology. And there are some out there for sure. I mean, like IL-2 is amazing, and DCS is amazing, and Onward VR is amazing. But the majority of entertainment titles on the PC now, and this is going to sound like an old guy comment, but it's just a bunch of click, run around, mash buttons, push the mouse button as fast as you can. I don't care about that. Never did. I didn't even when I was a kid. That didn't interest me. Like if my option was Doom or Red Baron, I went for Red Baron. That was always what I cared about. So no, I don't really have interest in retro PCs. The only thing I do like doing is some of the emulation stuff. And in that regard, I really like emulating the old Amiga and the Amiga operating system because really love the Amiga computer, and I still miss it to this day. Timo G, what is your favorite Finnish cold beverage? You know what? I know a lot of people talk smack about it, but I like long drink. Long drink is good. And I do really legitimately love salmiakki, and especially homemade, well-done salmiakki. So I'm going to answer salmiakki. Jason M, can we see an M1 Garen versus a 1941 Johnson on the clock? Sure, I need a 1941 Johnson. I got the Garand. I don't have the Johnson. If I could get a Johnson, would I do that? Would I make sure that we could do a versus on the clock? Absolutely would. But I don't have accessibility to one right now. Matthew J. What was involved in getting two-gun matches started? Holy mackerel. That's a huge endeavor. So, the club I'm at and still running two-gun at, the Pima Pistol Club, north of Tucson and Catalina, a guy before me, we're talking not 2 decades ago, 15, 16, whatever it was, years ago now, started a club there with a different two-gun group that was called ACS, the American Confederation of Tactical Shooters. They're headquartered out of, or they were headquartered out of Michigan. And they were trying to legitimately bring more like training, practical type shooting back to the sport. And I went out and shot that a number of times, and that guy had a great heart and wanted to do the right thing, but just couldn't pull it off as a match. And he gave up running it, and then I started running it with a couple other people under the ACS rules. And we were essentially beholden to their rule set and had very little input into their rule set. And they started causing consternation about I was grounding guns at my match. So, for example, I wanted to do more physical stuff where, like, the kettlebell or running down range and moving a target or the stuff you see in Two Gun Action Challenge. And instead of requiring the shooter to run with a hot gun or to reholster a hot pistol, which, by the way, is the most likely safety incident you'll have at a match is reholstering a hot pistol, I would allow people to ground guns. That did not align with the board of directors of that particular group at the time, and they felt that I was ruining the principles of the match, and that reholstering a hot pistol, as I recall it, was quintessential to their rules and to the vision of ACS. And that division, along with the fact that they were all the way over there and I'm all the way over here, kind of broke us apart and fragmented it, and I decided to create my whole new thing. And I derived a whole new rule set, which has really nothing to do with theirs, except for the concept of it being two-gun, but two-gun existed before that anyway. And built my own thing from the ground up. And my thing from the ground up allowed me to do things like manual division and grounding hot guns and things that I did from a safety perspective as a match director that I thought were important to be able to run the type of physically oriented event, but safely with even brand new shooters. So I wish them the best. I never wish them any malice, but I do not wish to run under their rule set. Additionally, the other thing that had to happen is we had to ingratiate ourselves with the range, and being at PM Pistol Club over the years has been a challenge. We're doing different weird stuff, and different weird stuff draws attention, and different weird stuff has had to be justified. Sometimes we can't do it anymore. One time we shot out of a moving vehicle there, for example. We were told to never do that again, even though it was safe. And the range has changed over time, and for the most part, they see us as hopefully, I think they see us as a valuable and safe part of the range because we've never had a true firearms-related safety incident. But it was very difficult to convince the people that run the range that why should we be doing something that isn't IDPA or USPSA. And that's a challenge you're going to find anywhere that you're going to try and do two-gun, regardless of what rule set you're using. Travis R. Third time asking, is slamfire a flaw or a feature of a pump-action shotgun? So what Travis is talking about here is, of course, the very infamous Winchester shotgun that we think of nowadays that the troops used in, American troops used in World War I, but really didn't. And that as you hold the trigger and slam the pump forward, it'll just fire every time the pump goes forward. So bam, 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 you don't have to pull the trigger, in theory, increasing your rate of fire. Was that Winchester designed to do that? I don't know. I haven't looked into it. But I will tell you that I've tried to use slamfire to see how effective it is. And as far as I can tell, it's a darn nightmare. You can't hit anything with it. It's kind of scary. It goes off when you don't really expect it. Maybe you could get really good at practicing with it. It's not valuable. And the fact is, closing the pump and pulling the trigger is far better than trying to do slam firing. I do not support slam firing. I think it is, if it was designed to be a feature, it's now a flaw. And the idea that people think that it was a useful thing is not real. It was never really used that I'm aware of. And I would recommend, if you're going to do it, just play with it at close range and do not consider it a feature. Just consider it an interesting gee whiz thing. As you might see, the camera moved a little. It's super windy out here today, so hopefully I'm getting good audio. I apologize for that little. Red Army Reenactor. Of the single-shot rifles developed in the 1870s and 1880s, which one do you think is best designed? Oh, this is easy for me, and this has nothing to do with me being here as an American, but it's the trapdoor. Trapdoor rifles are phenomenal, both the 1868, the 1870, and 50-70, up to the 1873, 1878, etc., 1884. The trapdoor is an amazing rifle, and I'm going to be doing some videos on the channel very much about the trapdoor in the near future, so stay tuned for that. But I will tell you, this is going to be controversial. Everyone's going to say the Martini Henry or whatever. I disagree. Not the Remington rolling block. That's much slower. For a all-around, effective, accurate, high rate of fire, single-shot rifle, the Springfield trapdoor rules. Chris S. Do you think matches like the first large do-it-yourself gun makers match in June will actually have an effect on reducing the negative stigma of DIY guns to the world? No, I do not. So, first of all, this is 3D printed guns. Make your own guns at home. And they're having a match where people are going to bring these things that they made in their garage, which is legal in this country. And I think that's great. And I support people investigating technology and being those creative minds, because you never know what's going to come out of that. Do I think it will reduce the negative stigma? Absolutely not. In fact, anything to do with DIY guns will have an increasing negative stigma. They're going to be constantly referred to as ghost guns. And while I think you should have this match, I'm not saying you shouldn't, the match might actually increase attention to ghost guns, not decrease it. This is a fight we're going to have regardless of if we have matches or not. Nothing's going to reduce the negative stigma because the media is going to absolutely beat the drum of the negative stigma. So the only way we can do that is through education. And a match is good, and I think it's a good place to test out the equipment. But the reality is this is going to be a huge fight for not only the freedom to be able to do and use technology in our own homes, but also the freedom to make guns, but also digital rights as well. Because, for example, we're already seeing things, for example, where 3D printers have DRM on them that prevent the printing of certain parts that they think are associated with DIY guns. This is going to be big. It's going to be a big fight. It's going to transcend not just gun rights. In fact, gun rights are going to be the least of it. This is going to absolutely dip into digital rights, which I frequently say on this channel are even more important, because the digital rights are going to wane, and when the digital rights wane, the gun rights are going to go with them. So, no, it will not reduce the negative stigma, and we have a big fight coming. Garrick B. What are your views about content creating and merchandising? InRange stays away from meme products, but they seem to sell well for other people. Have at it. If you want to make meme products and that works for your channel or your content, okay. I'm not here to tell other people what to do. I do stay away from them because I don't find them interesting. I don't find them compelling. In my opinion, they water down what I'm trying to do, and it's not interesting to me at all. So I don't. I mean, we've had some meme type t-shirts that were fun. I think humor is fine. I don't know exactly what meme products you're referring to, but it's not something I want to focus on. Just like it's not what I want to focus on content. Martin M. Should we take a more active role in attempting to control the lives of anti-gunners? Seems they seem so interested in ours. Absolutely not. Why would anyone want to take the active role in controlling the lives of anyone else? This is a nearly offensive question to me. I'm not denigrating you here, Martin, but I have no interest in controlling the life of anyone else, and I have no interest in anyone else controlling my life. As long as I'm not imposing my life upon others, I want them to live the life they see fit, appropriate to them, because you get that one shot at it. And I want nothing to do with controlling others' lives, their identity, or anything they want to do with it, as long as it doesn't negatively affect others because they're impinging it upon them inappropriately. So, do I have a problem with anti-gunners impinging upon me and my life? Yes, absolutely. But does not mean that I would want to fight fire with fire in terms of controlling their lives. This type of authoritarianism is exactly the problem we have in our system worldwide, culturally, not just in the United States. And I think we'd be a lot better world if we would take the approach of, you know what, live and let live, and don't try to control others. Jordan W. If cyber attacks are going to be the key of warfare moving forward, what type of attacks do you envision to be the most useful or most effective? They're the long-term latent threats, like compromised systems that are sitting there compromised until they needed to be used. So, for example, we have botnets and things sitting around just waiting for their beacon to do whatever negative thing they're going to do. DDoS is okay, but the reality is, for example, compromised water pump systems, electrical grids, that's real world. It's already there. I guarantee you there's already compromises existing in that, probably multiple nation states against one another. And this is going to be the new version of mutually assured destruction, quite honestly. It may not be nuclear. We may not have a nuclear winter, but the repercussions of destroying an electrical grid are quite significant. So, there will be a day in warfare where we're going to see that very thing occur. On top of that, the other thing we're going to see a lot of in cyber attacks, and we're seeing it now, is the intentional spread of disinformation. People spread, whether it's deep fakes or just putting out something. For example, people put out absolutely fake screenshots of things I never said on my Discord. They used the stupid editor or developer console, which is not hacking, I know. They went onto my Discord, used the developer thing, made me say things I never said, or modified things I said to say something entirely different than what I said, and then published screenshots into the internet. And even though I've put out a video absolutely stating that I never said those things and absolutely did not say those things and would not say those things, the reality is there isn't a day that goes by that I see someone find out someone referencing that disinformation. We need to be more cognizant of what we believe when you look at the internet and the emerging deep fakes, whether it's via audio, video, or just screenshots, for gosh sakes. The fact that screenshots can convince people of such nonsense shows me that deep fakes with audio and video are going to be catastrophically dangerous. And we're right on if it's not already happening, we're right on the cusp of that becoming a severe reality. Henry S. I'm fairly new to the world of firearms, so is getting burned by companies like Standard Manufacturing something that happens from time to time, or is this unusual? Wow, that's a hard one. You know, through the history of InRange, we've dealt with quite a few companies that have been absolutely fantastic and come out with great products that just worked right out of the box and did great things. And then we've had other companies like Standard Manufacturing, as well as, oh gosh, who was that other company way back when? They did the Mac 10 stuff. I can't even remember. Who cares? They made some stuff. I think reality is, look at the marketing. Look at if you look at the marketing for the S333 from Standard Manufacturing, to be honest, the marketing alone, not because it's not high production value, but running around in a ghillie suit, shooting water bottles at 5 feet with this pistol, and then saying that that's proof that it's great for self-defense, that kind of tells you something right there. However, so if you stick to really the quality manufacturers, people like Smith & Wesson or Magpul or oh my gosh, the wide variety of them, right? You're probably going to be fine. But when you start getting into the little third parties, some of them are great. SMG Guns, Rick Smith, that makes the reproduction FG42, phenomenal. That guy is a wizard and very responsible and respecting of his customer base in terms of support and his guns. Then you go to Standard Manufacturing, and it's this broken, tumbling bullet piece of shit that won't even talk to their customer base. And then they put out an update that they want to charge you for to fix the gun you bought in the first place. Is it unusual? Yes. But does it happen from time to time? Yes. Look at reviews from content creators or for that you trust, and also look at the marketing. Eric L. In your opinion, would a bare-bones Sten-Style semi-auto PCC see success in the current firearms market? Nope, not unless it was sold for like $100. So if you could make a bare-bones Sten-Style semi-auto PCC that somehow was very reliable and sold for like 100 or 200 bucks, maybe. And even then it's a maybe. The reality is a lot of people ask for these reproduction historic guns and very few people actually buy them. And the reality is manufacturing reproduction historic guns is a very expensive endeavor. And therefore when they come out, the price of the gun is higher than people are willing to pay for the reproduction. And usually they have some like glitches or they don't work quite right out of the box at first because it's hard to make these things because they're made from old world manufacturing styles and technologies. And so people, one, complain, too expensive, 200 bucks, I'd buy it. Why is it 700? And then very few people buy it, and then inevitably you lose your money and go out of business. So, no, there is not a market for that. Seth G. Do you plan to revisit having your own 3-gun match where competitors run a DMR, infantry rifle, and pistol? Actually, yes. Desert Brutality 2021 is roughly scheduled for November of this year. It is not up for practice score yet. When it goes up for practice score, it will be a 3-gun match exactly like that, DMR, rifle, and pistol. There will be one division if you only have a rifle and a pistol, so you don't have to have a DMR. And as always, the people who are at the 2-gun army and above supporters on Patreon will get early access and a discount. Gabriel C. Second time asking, if you had to equip a random military with something that isn't an AR or an AK, what would you choose? You're going to think I'm on their payroll, and I am not. I picked the MDR. KDC. Second time asking, no worries. What are some of your favorite Western genre films? Oh, this one's good. My favorite Western of all time isn't Tombstone, although Tombstone's a fun movie. My favorite Western of all time is The Missing. Came out in 2003. You're going to see it referenced on this channel in the war for Apacheria. It is a beautifully shot, historically accurate. Even though the story itself is technically fiction, it is so based on so many real events and so many things that people experienced around 1886 on the Arizona-New Mexico border that it might as well be a true story. The acting is phenomenal. The historicity and the historical accuracy is phenomenal. Everything about it's amazing. The Missing is freaking amazing. It is my favorite Western, easily, hands down, of all time. Appaloosa is a really good Western, not really innovative, not really a unique story, but a very great movie because the historical accuracy, the shooting, very historically portrayed, and the actual Wyatt Earp-inspired narrative is also pretty real world. And then for just pure, brutal, Old West fun, and, well, I don't know if you call it fun, brutal, Bone Tomahawk is amazing as well. Those are 3 of my ultimate favorites. There's others. Broken Trail, absolutely amazing. Lonesome Dove, really good as well. But, Broken Trail is phenomenal. Let me throw that out there as well. Absolutely Broken Trail. So, The Missing, Bone Tomahawk, Appaloosa, Broken Trail. Thomas K. Solid maybe for the DEF CON shoot. I have not made it to DEF CON in years. First of all, it got canceled this year because of COVID. But I had not been to DEF CON for years. And I have not been to the DEF CON shoot for years because it was always scheduled at the same time as Finnish Brutality. Depending on schedules, next year, if they run DEF CON, I will absolutely try to make it to DEF CON. I miss DEF CON. I miss my friends and I miss the shoot. But I haven't been there in years. But yeah, I'm going to try. Solid maybe. N7 Shepherd. With the continued push of censorship and your most recent shadow ban video, which was shadow banned for a while and then they took it away after I complained, the 1851 cartridge conversion, how do you feel about people downloading and archiving your videos for consuming at a later time or for backup purposes in general? I have no issue with this whatsoever. InRange is entirely a viewer-supported project. Patreon only. You, the viewer, decide whether or not InRange will stay here. I do not believe that you can put anything content related on the internet, video, text, photos, and expect them to not be abducted. And I don't mean that as a problem. Like, once you put it on the internet, it's public access. Everyone gets it. It's owned by the internet. It's not owned by you. So abducted is not the right word. Once you put it on the internet, you no longer own it. The internet does. So in that regard, as long as the Patreons are there to keep InRange alive, I am more than fine with you downloading and archiving these. I'm more than fine with you re-uploading them to other venues as long as you include my call out to Patreon to try and keep the channel alive. Essentially, go for it. Yeah, no problem whatsoever. Bryce D. What's going on with the Liver Gun project? Will we see any more 1876 content? You will. It's been a long time on that one, I know. We do have an 1876. Ran into some issues with the ammo manufacturing I did. I ran into other issues with it. We tried to film with it once, had a broken day that didn't work out. Need to revisit it. Yes, there'll be more on the lever gun project. I know these things take forever. There's also the Civil War carbine project, of which there's been some stuff recently. There will be 1876 content, but I got to deal with some of the issues that I ran into in terms of ammo, etc., and that's even harder now than it was then. So there will be more, absolutely. In fact, I've also got some cowboy action stuff coming too. Zay or not, I've asked this question a few times before. Oh, I already kind of addressed this. Do you believe that the drug legalization or reform supporters could be viable allies for the firearms community on the basis that both love individual rights? If so, why have we not seen this happen already? Mostly because, in my opinion, I don't know about everyone on the drug legalization reform side, but I have seen a heck of a lot of people on the firearms right side denigrate and turn away people that believe in drug legalization or reform. Once again, degeneracy, right? They're scum. So if someone that would, if you believe in firearms rights and the firearms rights supporters call you names and essentially curse you, why would you want to be an ally with them? You may still believe in firearms rights, but you're going to probably pick your pet right, which at that point is the legalization of drugs, just like the gun people have picked their pet right, sustaining gun rights, and therefore they're at opposition with one another when, in my opinion, they're both moving down the path of individual personal liberty and should be allies, not enemies. Colin H. Other than the Walker Colt, which Old West gun do you think was overrated or receives too much fanfare? Oh, this one's easy. The Merwin and Hobart. Everyone thinks the Merwin and Hobart was riding a unicorn in the battle. It is not. It is an incredibly well-machined, beautiful handgun. But in reality, the Schofield is a far more combat-oriented handgun with better reloads. The Merwin and Hobart, it was designed mostly to get around patents and was a beautiful example of 19th century machining. And they are incredible and beautiful guns. And they do work well. A gigantic hawk just flew over me. I mean, I love the desert. Anyways, the Merwin and Hobart is absolutely overrated because everyone thinks that because they're rare and expensive, they must be the best. They are rare, relatively rare, and they are expensive because they're rare and very difficult to machine. That does not make them the best. Therefore, they're overrated. Sam S. Where are you as of right now when you read this question for the Q&A video? I'm sitting in the desert at my table in my yard. You can see that on the video, I think. Jack B. You have often said that you set up your matches to be completed at minimum with a stock Acam rifle. What pistol do you use as the benchmark for these same matches? So for two-gun action challenge match, what I do is I try to design the stages to be completely finishable, not winnable, completable with standard stock Acam iron sights. And that's the baseline for making a stage design. Is this possible to finish in the par with a stock Acam? If that's the case, then this is a good stage design. For pistol, I would say a 1911. However, I would not say that does not mean you do not need to carry multiple magazines. So I would say, can you finish this stage as long as you have sufficient magazines with a World War I iron-sighted style 1911? The reason I say World War I is it's got those little tiny sights. And so if it's possible to finish the stage with a 1911, then that's a good stage design. Joe S. If I recall, you said before that you were completely against items like the mag pull bad lever, since they require you to move your trigger finger towards the trigger. Actually, the bad lever doesn't make you move towards the trigger. You kind of push sideways, but it's inside the trigger guard. I only have experience with one such device, the Tactical Link product. I don't know that product. But it seems to me that it sticks out far enough to be actuated by moving your trigger finger vertically outside the trigger guard, somewhat like an AK safety. Well, I can't speak to the Tactical Link product. I don't know anything about it. The mag pull bad lever is inside the trigger guard, enough so at least, that it absolutely inspires and makes it much more likely for you to have a negligent or accidental discharge. And I know, so many, it's a training issue, Just train with it. Don't be dumb. It's just all you got to do is train with it. If I have to out-train my technology to prevent me from having an AD because I've put something that wasn't there in the first place in the trigger guard, that's a bad product. It's stupid. The Magpul bad lever is stupid. I have seen at least 4 people, all of them quite competent, one of them being myself, once having an AD with the Magpul bad lever. That product sucks. Putting stuff inside the trigger guard for control of the gun is not a good idea. They did it in the M1 Garen, in which you flip forward for the safety. That's at least better because you're moving directly away from the trigger. But the Magpul bad lever absolutely is Serpa-like in that, yes, you can train around it. But why do I want to train around the gear I'm using to prevent myself from having an AD that wouldn't have happened in the first place if I used better design gear? Eric L. In light of recent content for the modernization of an older platform like the VZ8 video you did, would you review something like the TechSight TS100 for the SKS platform? I did look this up. The TechSight TS100 is an aperture sight that goes on the rear of the dust cover assembly on an SKS. Yeah, I'd look at it, but I gotta be honest with you, I'm not that interested in the SKS. I don't think the SKS is a platform that lends itself to modernization well. It's an interesting historical gun. It's viable from an obsolescence perspective, but the fact that it doesn't have a detachable magazine and the stripper clip feeds on the SKS are atrociously terrible, and it's 10 round capacity. And yes, I know you can get third-party magazines for those things, and they're all terrible. They just are. Just the very nature of it not having a pistol grip and not having, I think the pistol grip's a good ergonomic thing. You don't have to have it, but it's important. And not having a detachable magazine is makes the SKS platform something not worth modernizing. It just isn't. David W. Jr. I already contribute on Patreon to help you with the channel. Thank you. Does it make a difference whether I watch the videos on BitChute, Patreon, or YouTube? I usually catch up on weekends at BitChute. Nope, not at all. Doesn't matter whatsoever. Being that you support the channel directly, it doesn't matter what you watch it on. It doesn't matter if you download it and watch it on your phone. It doesn't matter if you download it and watch it on a toaster. It doesn't matter if you watch it on BitChute, Patreon, or YouTube. Don't care. Thank you for being a supporter. The only thing I can say that would be helpful is if you like the video, to share it to others that you think might like the video. Whether it's BitChute or YouTube, getting the views up on any content, regardless of where it's distributed, provides a larger window of potential future supporters. There's always attrition, right? Someone gets COVID and can't support anymore. Someone moves on to another interest and they leave Patreon. The views being high enough to refill those who backfill, those who move on for whatever reason, is important. And the algorithms suck, so if you can share my content, that's hugely helpful. As for where you watch it, no, doesn't matter. Thank you for the support. Teddy, swapping pistol grips on an AR, important force multiplier or pointless fancy bangle? I don't get this at all. This turns into the Barbie doll thing. Does it have a pistol grip and can I reach the safety with my thumb ergonomically? I'm good. I'm not worried about all these different newfangled pistol grips that you can put on there, frankly. As long as it meets the basic fundamental requirements of what a pistol grip is supposed to achieve, I don't really think that there's any way you can force multiply with a pistol grip. As long as it achieves the basic minimum of not breaking off and giving you sufficient ergonomics that you can reach the trigger reliably and the safety reliably, then I see no reason to bother with it. And I think this is just an example of, I want to make my thing personalized, which there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to personalize, you're going to have at it. But is it a force multiplier? Absolutely not. Patrick H. Have you ever had yourself or seen a cartridge detonate in a tube magazine? Wow, that's a good one because, so for those of you that don't understand, on a lever gun, the rounds go down a tube, and as you run the action, they slowly fall into a faller and then get raised up, aligned with the chamber, and as you close it, the bolt puts the gun into battery. So as you cycle the action, those rounds in the magazine slide back under spring pressure onto the follower. And have I ever seen this? Yes, I have. I've seen it twice. One time to me. One time I was at a cowboy action match many years ago with an 1866 reproduction Winchester. I don't know if I had a faulty primer or a high primer. I'm pretty good about my reloads. Reloading black powder. And as I cycled the action, didn't even fire a round. All I did was cycle the action for the first round to fall under the follower. The third round down the barrel detonated, and it chain fired down the entire tube and then blew out from the end. It was spicy and exciting, let me tell you that. Had that been a Henry, which had an opening at the bottom of the magazine tube, I would have taken a big old hand of shrapnel. So the improvement of a solid magazine tube in the 1866 Winchester is a valuable and solid improvement and evolution of that platform, as well as the Kingsgate loading patent, which is much faster. So that happened to me directly. Cycle action, blammo, it was exciting. The gun was able to be repaired. It did bend the lever. It did blow out the magazine tube, but other than that, the gun was repairable, and I still use it to this day. The other one I saw was someone inappropriately using a Henry in which they dropped the follower on a not fully loaded magazine. So on a Henry, you pull up the spring for the follower, turn it, and then you put the rounds in. And if you only put in, let's say 5, and then close the follower and just drop it, all of the spring pressure of that slams down on the nose of the first bullet of the first cartridge, then causing that force to trickle down all of the rounds. And in doing that, I saw that happen, and those rounds detonated, and they shrapneled out the side of the of that magazine well. So yes, I've seen it twice. It is a thing. When you're using ammunition in a tube-fed magazine gun, make sure your primers are hard primers. Make sure they're properly seated all the way down to the full depth of the primer pocket, and that should mitigate the risk. Having a closed magazine tube, like on a 66 or a 73, mitigates the risk even more. The Henry is the most risky of those. So that's the last question for today. This turned into just about an hour, like it always does, and I want to thank all of my Patreon supporters for making this channel stay surviving. Can't even drink. So anyways, by the way, Topo Chico. This is essentially the Mexican version of Perrier. It is delicious mineral water that comes out of the ground carbonated in Mexico. I think Coca-Cola bought it and they're increasing their distribution. This one has grapefruit flavor, but Topo Chico is absolutely delicious. Let me get back to where I was going with this. I want to thank all the Patreon supporters for keeping this channel alive. As I mentioned earlier, this is a demonetized channel, proactively demonetized by me. Only you, the viewer, keep InRange alive, and all of you that are doing that and asking these questions, you're the person doing that. Thank you for making it possible to make this type of content on the internet, regardless of the algorithm. If you're not one already and would like to consider it, you can find us at patreon.com/InRangeTV. And if you can't, understood, just subscribe to one of the multiple distribution points. You can find them all at InRange.tv/watch. But more importantly, as I mentioned earlier, if you like the video, please, please, please share with your friends. That's the best way to fight the algorithm. Also on YouTube, leaving a comment doesn't hurt either. Thanks for watching.